machines that resemble a tractor, fire truck, and snowblower all in one. They are known as Spudniks, and each one can harvest several hundred tons of potatoes weekly.
Once the potatoes are out of the ground, nearly 60% of them are shipped to a French fry processing plant. It looks like an oil refinery with huge pipes and catwalks several stories high. The potatoes are rolled through a conveyor belt that lets dirt and rocks fall through, and the spuds are mechanically sorted.
Graduate classroom.
Wet potatoes drop into a steam machine, which blasts them with super hot steam for a little over 10 seconds. This boils the water under the skins and literally explodes them onto the potato.
Then, the spuds are shot through the water gun knife.
Yep, you heard that correctly. The water gun knife. It's like a fire hose shooting potatoes through a screen of blades that cut them into perfect French fries.
But sometimes the fries aren't cooked. So another machine, remember, the potatoes haven't been touched by a human yet, scans each French fry on a conveyor belt like an airport security line.
If the machine finds an imperfect French fry, it shoots a tiny puff of air to knock the ugly fry off the line. The perfect French fries are then dropped into a series of robotic machines that cook, freeze, and package them into 6-pound batches. One plant can spit out over 1 million pounds of fries a day.
It's a fascinating thing. Notice that the truck drivers hauling the bagged fries are the only human in the process until they get to the restaurant.
For all those billions of pounds of fries being made in the 1990s, there were fewer jobs in food manufacturing. Increased automation that made human labor nearly obsolete.
And it wasn't just potatoes. Industrial bakeries mechanically rolled and baked cookies and breads. Dairy machines fed and milked cows, then pasteurized and bottled the milk automatically. It seemed like anything that could be automated was now done by a machine. After all, machines were the only things tireless enough to keep up with the fast food industry's determination to sell more and more and more of the deadly products they were peddling.
Except when it came to making America's favorite sandwich, the hamburger. Where automation killed jobs, meat packing would kill people.
The modern slaughterhouse also resembles a factory. But here, there's only a disassembly line. Back in the early 20th century, meatpacking plants could slaughter and dress 50 cattle an hour. By 1980, a plant could handle 175 cattle an hour.
But with overwhelming demand for fast food meat increasing, by 1999, slaughterhouses were capable of handling nearly 400 cows an hour.
That's 6 full cows a minute. And while automation had transformed potato processing, meatpacking was still done almost exclusively by hand.
In an industry where a sharp blade is the primary tool, going as fast as humanly possible was bound to lead to injuries. And it did. Throughout the 1990s, and even to this day, meatpacking has been one of the most dangerous jobs in the country.
But the injuries extended past the slaughterhouse itself and into the public sphere. The exponential increase in meat production meant there were lapses in quality control. Meat from a single source could end up in hamburgers across the country, which meant diseased meat would affect more food over a wider area.
Lee Harding's chicken tacos weren't the culprit for E. coli. It was a pack of frozen hamburgers. However, it took a widespread investigation and over a dozen sick people before the common link was discovered. The beef had been pushed out to market so quickly and widely that it took even more time to trace. And by then, much of the meat had already been consumed.
This wasn't a one-off occurrence. In January 1993, hospitals in Seattle reported a high number of children being admitted with E. coli. Cases were traced to a Jack in the Box restaurant.
The company quickly recalled the meat that had made the children sick, but it was too late. By the time the contaminated hamburger meat had been traced and recalled, 700 people in 4 different states were sick. Most were children, and 4 of the victims died.
But the demand for Jack in the Box didn't. If the burgers and fries taste good, nobody stops to question what's in them.
The fast food industry knew that, so they invested in technology that made their products taste better than ever. Though artificial flavors first appeared back in the mid-1800s, by the 1990s, factory-made flavors were a billion-dollar industry, most of which were created somewhere you might not expect. New Jersey.
The New Jersey Turnpike is the highway to America's flavor town, where the headquarters and labs of over half a dozen flavor companies all stand within a few miles of each other. These labs are responsible for the taste of most processed food in America, and they are more secure than most bank vaults.
The flavor industry keeps the secret to every special sauce and homemade recipe. The formulas for specific products like Coke or Pepsi are closely guarded. Many of the flavor companies can't even say which fast food chains are their clients, because the chains don't want their customers to know that the taste of the hamburger they know and love came from a lab.
If you look at the ingredient list for any product in America, the vast majority will contain natural or artificial flavors. These terms both designate chemical compounds developed in a laboratory. The difference is how the chemical is produced.
Take almond, for example. The taste of almond extract comes from a chemical called benzaldehyde. Benzaldehyde can be derived naturally from peaches and apricots. But those natural sources contain traces of cyanide too. Cyanide, even in tiny amounts, is toxic.
But if benzaldehyde is artificially made by mixing chemicals, there's no cyanide, and it's safe to use for flavor. Either way, the flavor we call almond, unless it's in an actual almond, comes from a laboratory, and there's nothing natural about it.
To keep this disconcerting fact out of the minds of the public, who might otherwise reach for a real almond, food processing companies used lobbyists to make sure they didn't have to reveal any of the specific chemicals they were working with. All they had to specify was whether the flavors were artificial or quote unquote natural.
Specifically, they had their lobbyists support the GRAS or GRAS certification.
This means generally regarded as safe. It is the classification the FDA gives to all chemicals and ingredients it considers edible. If the ingredient isn't on their list, the lab must prove the ingredient is harmless before using it. But it still doesn't have to reveal the chemical formula to anyone but the FDA.
Throughout the 1990s, much of America's food was made by machines, flavored by laboratories, and kept behind a safe shield of fun and mystery by lobbyists. So, blissfully ignorant Americans were eating more of it than ever before.
At the same time, obesity rates were climbing at a record pace. By the end of the decade, over 60% of Americans were obese or overweight. The former Surgeon General, Dr. David Satcher, even said, left unabated, overweight and obesity may soon cause as much preventable disease and death as cigarette smoking.
But America had bought into the fast food industry's delicious myth-making wholesale. People didn't want to listen to the Surgeon General when they could listen to McDonald's, or rather their happy children spreading Mickey D's message.
And ever optimistic, Americans believed that if they were getting fat fast, then there had to be a way to get thin fast too.
Coming up, new weight loss solutions emerge, but they only make things worse.
As a job site leader, you run on one simple idea: do it better. You sweat the details as much as the head, and good enough is anything but. That same mindset drives DeWalt to create tools that work faster, safer, and better. our leaders and future leaders do the same. Because in this business, true leaders are all that builds the world.
There are some things you should always check, like the hygiene rating on your local takeaway, the setting on your razor, and whether the party actually is fancy dress. The other thing you should check is your Experian credit report, especially if you're looking to borrow money. It lets you understand what lenders see, so you can increase your chances of getting the best deals. It's dead easy to check it, and completely free. See it in seconds. Download the Experian app today.
Now, back to the story.
In 1988, Oprah Winfrey wheeled a little red wagon out in front of her audience and TV cameras. In the wagon were 67 pounds of animal fat, the amount Oprah had lost that year on a liquid protein diet.
She was confident, thin, and a new convert to dieting. The Fat Wagon episode became one of the highest rated in Oprah's career, and the visceral image of fat helped launch the next decade of diet fads.
Dieting wasn't anything new in America. Each decade since at least the 1950s had experienced a new wave of diet techniques. In the 60s, it was diet pills, which were simply low-grade amphetamines. In the early 70s, the grapefruit diet took America by storm. For the next 15 to 20 years, Americans rode a wave of diet cookbooks, weight loss subscription programs, and celebrity-endorsed techniques, including Oprah's liquid protein plan.
By the outset of the 1990s, the dieting trend was all about low-fat food.
The human body breaks down food into 4 macromolecules: fat, protein, carbohydrates, and nucleic acids. Each one of the molecules serves a purpose in the body. But in the 90s, it was fat that seemed to be piling up in American bodies like never before.
So at the dawn of the 1990s, the solution seemed simple. Remove as much fat as possible from food. Low-fat diets had already been a trend in the 1970s, but this time, it was different.
The food manufacturers developed new processes to extract fat from snacks and cookies. Fast food restaurants adopted new low-fat techniques for cooking. French fries were even cooked in vegetable oil instead of beef tallow.
But there was a dirty little secret hiding in all the low-fat processed food.
Sugar.
Food manufacturers found that taking the fat out of foods simply made them less tasty, no matter how many flavor chemicals they added. They had to replace the fat with something, and often that was sugar.
Diet guru and cardiologist Dean Ornish explained the problem. I had a patient once who was starting to gain weight on a so-called low-fat diet, and I said, "What are you eating?" They said, "Oh, I'm eating just 1 or 2 a day." I said, 1 or 2 pieces of these low-fat cakes? "No, 1 or 2 cakes at a sitting," they said. "Well, it's low-fat, why not? It can't be bad for me." But it was high in sugar.
This mentality was in part a result of the marketing we explored earlier. Snackwell cookies, Entenmann cakes, and Wow brand snack chips were all low-fat, as healthy alternatives to other desserts and snacks.
Gene Goldberg, a nutrition researcher, said, "If you take out fat, you gotta put something in. That something, surprise, surprise, has calories."
While the fat content was reduced, the sugar kept the calorie count of many foods the same or even increased it. And those calories, regardless of where they came from, were leading to fat gain.
Plus, the sugar Americans were ingesting wasn't simply the white, sweet granules that we keep in our kitchen cupboards. Usually, they were complex chemical additives.
High fructose corn syrup, glucose, sucrose, and aspartame are all other names for the same sweet substance. And some of these additives have terrible side effects.
One additive, a chemical called Olestra, was a popular fat substitute in potato chips in the 90s. Using Olestra allowed advertisers to market chips as nearly 0 fat, 0 calorie, and 0 cholesterol. They were a dieter's dream snack.
But olestra also blocked the body's processes to absorb certain nutrients from food, which left many dieters feeling weak and malnourished. On top of that sick feeling from a lack of nutrients, olestra caused cramps, flatulence, and blue stool.
But the low-fat craze wasn't the only diet to sweep America in the 90s. There were a number of others, notably the Atkins diet.
Cardiologist Robert Atkins debuted his diet plan in a 1992 book. Like the low-fat crowd, he also focused on the idea of the 4 nutrients the body extracts from food. But Atkins claimed that the one to eliminate was carbohydrate, not fat.
The Atkins diet focused on high-protein, high-fat foods and eliminated all carbohydrates. Bread, fruit, cookies, white flour, and rice. Anything with carbs was a no-go for Atkins adherents.
But the plan for weight loss often had the opposite effect. If a person didn't strictly follow the Atkins method or went off the diet for a few days, they actually gained weight.
Restricting the intake of all carbohydrates puts the body into ketosis, a state which breaks down stored fat for energy, but can cause fatigue, nausea, and headaches. When carbohydrates are consumed again and ketosis stops, the dieter may gain the weight back.
But the massive marketing campaign for Atkins never revealed any of these side effects. It only encouraged dieters to buy more Atkins-friendly products, and above all else, stay on the diet.
For many dieters, this was like whiplash. First, they were supposed to cut out fat, and now carbohydrates? It was hard to tell if any foods were good to eat anymore.
So some dieters didn't worry about food intake at all. Shortly after Atkins' book was published, dieters were introduced to a simple alternative, a little white and blue pill.
The fen-phen pill, short for fenfluramine and phentermine, was a miracle product released after a 1992 study that promised immediate weight loss.
And it worked. A combination of an appetite suppressant and an amphetamine then blocked hunger pangs, and dieters found themselves skipping meals without hesitation. Who needed food when you had a pill?
For several years, fen-phen dominated the diet craze marketing, especially among women. But in 1997, the FDA declared fen-phen pills unsafe and thus illegal to advertise and sell. Studies of fen-phen dieters had shown that in only a few short years, they had developed issues with their heart valves.
To make matters worse, even after abandoning the pills, researchers found that the cardiovascular damage in fen-phen dieters may continue for years afterward.
Luckily, another diet plan was there to pick up where the pills had left off. The Zone diet, created in 1995, claimed to have found the perfect percentage of fat, carb, and protein intake for a healthy diet.
All a dieter had to do was buy the book and follow the formula calculations with every meal. Celebrity spokespeople like Jennifer Aniston touted the Zone diet as the long-awaited solution to America's growing obesity.
Competing with the Zone diet was the Blood Type diet, a 1996 book that featured a customized diet plan based on blood type. There was no scientific evidence to show that blood type affected weight loss, but the book flew off the shelves anyway.
The pattern kept repeating. By the end of the 90s, dozens of books claimed to have the surefire plan for weight loss. But America was fatter than ever. By the year 2000, 60% of Americans were overweight. Diabetes in adolescents rose 70% over the decade.
Gene Goldberg, the nutrition researcher, looked at the failure of diets and realized there was another problem in America, and it wasn't the food itself. She said that moderation is a concept that Americans have a really hard time with. If we could eat 2 cookies and move on, we'd need a lot less of what I call this jiggering with the food supply. But we don't. We want to eat a lot of things and a lot of what we eat.
While America was busy trying to find a weight loss diet, nobody noticed the most insidious food issue of the 1990s, supersizing.
McDonald's introduced the supersize in 1992. Wendy's soon followed with the first biggie size. By the end of the decade, nearly every fast food restaurant had increased their portion size options.
The supersize of those perfect French fries contained over 600 calories. The biggie soda at Wendy's was 32 ounces, which means over 80 grams of sugar. Its great biggie was 42 ounces.
But supply was simply following demand. In 1998, Americans consumed an average of 58 gallons of soda a year.
That's over 600 standard 12-ounce cans over the year, or almost 2 cans a day.
As soda sizes increased in the 90s, car manufacturers had to change the size of their cup holders. Even then, most cup holders couldn't fit a 7-Eleven double gulp, which contained a half gallon of soda.
This pattern revealed the darkest truth of all. Americans wanted the food they were consuming in the biggest portions possible. It seems that food advertisers had succeeded more than they ever could have anticipated.
Companies had always cared about profits more than people. Their products, from cigarettes to soda, were simply opportunities for cash.
But unlike cigarettes, which were already regulated due to health concerns, food was seen as a benign fact of life. People had to eat, so why not enjoy the food?
This artificially made food was costing Americans more than money or time. It was costing years of their lives. But because it felt good to eat it, many Americans couldn't bring themselves to care.
After all, there was always a diet option.
To this day, Americans spend almost $1 trillion a year on fast food. Trillion with a T. And the CDC recently reported that nearly 37% of Americans eat at fast food joints every day.
The 1990s were the decade when food consumption became not only a primary facet of the American economy, but a defining trait of American identity.
And cuisine was hardly the only part of the American identity that was having a crisis in the 90s. Next week, we're diving into the fraught race relations of the decade and the national upheaval after Rodney King's brutal beating at the hands of police.
Thanks for listening to The Dark Side Up. You can find more episodes of The Dark Side Up for free on Spotify. Not only does Spotify already have all of your favorite music, but now Spotify is making it easy for you to enjoy all of your favorite podcast originals for free from your phone, desktop, or smart speaker. Just open the app and type The Dark Side Up in the search bar. We'll see you next time.
The Dark Side Of was created by Max Cutler and is a Parcast Studios original. Executive producers include Max and Ron Cutler. Sound design by Brendan Hawkins, with production assistance by Ron Shapiro, Carly Madden, and Travis Clark. This episode of The Dark Side Up was written by Andrew Messer, with writing assistance by Kate Gallagher, and stars Kate Leonard and Richard Rossner.
The award-winning Only Murders in the Building is back on Disney Plus.
Tell me more.
This time, the stakes are higher than ever.
Lester had a run-in with the mobster the night he died. Triggered the Godfather. I made him an offer he couldn't decline.
With a star-studded cast including Meryl Streep
Let's talk murder.
and Renee Zellweger.
Oh,
Please tell me you recorded that.
Only Murders in the Building. New season now streaming exclusively on Disney Plus. 18+ subscription requires and T's apply.
this episode includes discussions of assault and murder that some people may find offensive. We advise extreme caution for children under 13. Picture this. Carlton Banks, dressed in his signature preppy attire, does an exuberantly nerdy dance, swinging his arms, shimmying his hips, and lip-syncing to Tom Jones's It's Not Unusual.
Chances are you've seen this dance performed either on TV, in a GIF, or, if you're lucky, in real life. The Carlton, as it would come to be known, got its start as a gag on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, but went on to become one of the most iconic dance moves of the 1990s.
In addition to Fresh Prince, the 90s saw a wave of TV shows with black actors front and center, from Family Matters to Martin, Living Single, and many more.
Not only did these sitcoms launch the careers of huge stars like Will Smith, Martin Lawrence, and Queen Latifah, they also marked a huge increase in representation for the Black community. Black people saw themselves on TV not just as sidekicks or secondary characters, but as the stars of the show.
While this was a step in the right direction, these kinds of shows also had their limitations. In order to appeal to wider audiences, network sitcoms mostly portrayed lighter, sanitized scenarios.
Assembled in the studios of the sunny San Fernando Valley, these brightly packaged storylines were very different from the realities unfolding in the Black enclave of South Central Los Angeles, just over 15 miles away.
In the 1990s, this rose-tinted view of what it meant to be Black was shattered by a series of violent incidents in quick succession. The fallout exposed the jagged fault line of race in Los Angeles specifically, and in America as a whole. This is The Dark Side Of, a Parcast original, a show where we will delve into the seedy underbelly of pop culture icons and historical events.
We aim to expose the ugly truth behind cultural moments and public figures we hold most dear, proving that there is always more to the story than meets the eye. I'm your host, Richard.
And I'm Kate. This is our 7th episode on the dark side of the 90s. As every decade brings new challenges, a rosy tint has started to color these bygone years. But all this nostalgia obscures the more unpleasant bits of 90s history.
You can find all episodes of The Dark Side Of and all other Parcast originals for free on Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. To stream The Dark Side Of for free on Spotify, just open the app, tap Browse, and type The Dark Side Of in the search bar.
Last week, we talked about some of the less than savory foods of the 90s that drew the eye but sometimes upset our stomachs.
Today we'll focus our attention on the stomach-churning events surrounding the police beating of Rodney King in 1991 and its 1992 aftermath. The home video footage of this brutal action by the LAPD led to a watershed moment for awareness about racially motivated police brutality.
When the officers involved were acquitted, Los Angeles was thrown into several chaotic days of rebellion, which left the city unrecognizable on every level. Then, just 3 years later, the verdict in the O.J. Simpson trial shocked the nation, again highlighting issues of race in the criminal justice system.
We'll delve into the factors leading up to these momentous events after this.
There are some things you should always check, like the hygiene rating on your local takeaway, the setting on your razor, and whether the party actually is fancy dress. The other thing you should check is your Experian credit report, especially if you're looking to borrow money. It lets you understand what lenders see, so you can increase your chances of getting the best deals. It's dead easy to check it, and completely free. See it in seconds. Download the Experian app today.
This episode is presented by eBay. Rob, everyone loves a deal and a bargain from time to time, don't they?
Absolutely, mate. And do you know where you can grab a great deal?
Talk to me. Where?
The eBay app.
Yes, you are correct. You didn't need to talk to me. I already knew it. I love eBay. When you're buying, you can discover loads of hidden gems. There's so many items where you think, I would have never found that anywhere else.
Then when you're selling, it's so simple and most importantly, free.
It's free, Rob. When it's this easy to sell for free, and there's great deals on things you love, you can't help but say when it's eBay.
Excludes vehicles and business sellers.
There are some things you should always check, like the hygiene rating on your local takeaway, the setting on your razor, and whether the party actually is fancy dress. The other thing you should check is your Experian credit report, especially if you're looking to borrow money. It lets you understand what lenders see, so you can increase your chances of getting the best deals. It's dead easy to check it, and completely free. See it in seconds. Download the Experian app today.
The rebellion that unfolded in Los Angeles in 1992 brought to light issues of racism and police brutality that have long lingered in the shadows. But the explosive events had their roots in a centuries-long pattern of violence.
To more fully understand what took place, one has to take into consideration the myriad historical factors that heightened tensions between the Black community and the LAPD. 90 years before the beating of Rodney King, life was very different for Black Angelenos.
To some historians, the period between 1900 and 1929 was known as the Golden Era for Black residents of Los Angeles. Their population numbers grew, home ownership increased, and small businesses thrived.
But then the Great Depression hit, which was particularly devastating for Black citizens. Many of their small businesses failed, and they were forced to compete for scarce jobs and housing while also dealing with discrimination. There was also an influx of migrants from Dust Bowl states to California who were also seeking work. In some cases, these newcomers may have brought with them a legacy of racial segregation and antagonism.
In the mid-1930s, LAPD Chief James Davis contributed to the dragnet philosophy of policing, which involved stopping and searching anyone who looked suspicious. This in turn bred a legacy of police harassment, which shaped the department for decades to come.
But even in the midst of this troubling pattern of police behavior, the early 1940s ushered in a wave of industrialization, which temporarily elevated the prospects for Los Angeles' Black population.
In 1941, the United States was pulled into World War II, which triggered a boost in factory jobs to gear up for the war effort. This led to a brief increase in upward mobility for Black families and created a skilled Black workforce. But once peace was declared in 1945, Black workers were often the first to be let go and replaced by white veterans returning from the war.
By the 1950s, LA's Black community became residentially segregated, sending many into the most affordable neighborhoods such as South Central, Watts, Inglewood, and Crenshaw. In these areas, unemployment and crime rose, likely as a result of young men without skilled jobs or legitimate means to provide for themselves.
In response, the LAPD escalated its policing of the Black community, which only fueled a sense of injustice and anger. And these frustrations only grew stronger in the following decades.
The sweeping Civil Rights Act of 1964 gave Black Angelenos hope that they could fully participate in the American dream. But it was not enough to undo decades of discrimination and inequality. As a result, the Black community struggled to reconcile the promises of the Civil Rights Movement with the grim realities of unemployment, poverty, and police brutality.
On August 11, 1965, these frustrations erupted into the Watts Rebellion. The violence was sparked around 7 p.m. after a white California highway patrolman pulled over Marquette Fry.
Fry, a Black man, was suspected of drunk driving down Avalon Boulevard in the heart of the Watts neighborhood. After Fry failed a sobriety test, the officer attempted to arrest him and have his car towed.
Marquette's stepbrother Ronald and stepmother Rena both attempted to intervene on Marquette's behalf and were roughly arrested. A crowd of onlookers believed a rumor that Rena was pregnant, which made them even more angry and then violent. A physical altercation ensued, and an officer struck Marquette with his baton.
More police were called to the scene and treated the crowd with hostility, which further heightened tensions. Soon, a gathering of hundreds began throwing bottles, sticks, and bricks at passing cars and buses.
The unrest escalated and spread across South Central, leading to a riot that lasted for 5 days and nights. When all was said and done, 34 people were dead, with 1,000 injured, 4,000 arrested, and $40 million in property destroyed.
In the wake of the Watts Rebellion, the city of Los Angeles instated the McCone Commission to understand what had happened and to learn how to prevent future riots. The commission made several common sense recommendations, including increasing police oversight, and expanding police community relations programs. But unfortunately, the Commission's report was largely ignored.
Fearing for their safety, middle-class Black families and white residents departed from South Central, leaving behind those who couldn't afford to make the move. Over the next decade, the neighborhood became multicultural and multi-ethnic, populated by communities that had little experience coexisting in such close quarters.
Meanwhile, the issues of police misconduct, unemployment, and job discrimination that were enumerated in the Macomb Commission report not only persisted, they got worse.
Between 1978 and 1992, LAPD Chief Daryl Gates ran the predominantly white department with impunity. As social welfare scholar Jewel Taylor Gibbs writes in her book, Race and Justice, Rodney King and O.J. Simpson in A House Divided, the fact that the LAPD could arrest Black people without provocation, enter their homes without a warrant, and harass or assault them with impunity provoked chronic anger and outrage in the community.
Between 1975 and 1982, no fewer than 16 Black people were killed by police chokeholds. But distressingly, most of these incidents were deemed accidents. Occurrences like this deeply eroded any remaining faith that Black Angelenos had in the justice system.
The situation spiraled out of control as homicides rose to record levels in 1992. The people of South Central felt under attack, not only by criminals, but also by the police. These circumstances made Los Angeles a tinderbox. All it took was a single spark to light the city on fire.
On the evening of Saturday, March 2nd, 1991, 25-year-old Black man Rodney King drove up the freeway with two of his friends. King was having a great time chatting with his buddies until he heard police sirens behind him.
King's heart pounded in his chest. He had just put his life back together after a year-long stint in prison for robbery, and he feared going back to jail for a minor traffic violation.
So instead of pulling over, King sped up, trying to evade the authorities. The California Highway Patrol called for backup, joined soon by several LAPD squad cars in a high-speed chase. Just before 1 a.m., the police caught up to King's car and forced him off the road.
4 LAPD officers, Lawrence Powell, Timothy Wind, Stacy Kuhn, and Theodore Brusino, dragged King out of the car and began to beat him with their batons. The commotion woke up George Holliday, who lived in a nearby apartment. He went outside and trained his new video camera on the events unfolding in front of him.
While one officer shot King with a taser gun, the other three repeatedly kicked him and beat him with their batons. Holliday's video records no less than 56 baton strikes and 6 kicks over the course of 81 seconds. The footage also shows more than a dozen cops standing by, watching and commenting on the beating without to stop it.
The officers assaulting King cursed him and shouted racial epithets, all while King struggled to crawl away from the blows raining down on him. But he was surrounded. There was nowhere to go.
This beating at the hands of the police resulted in extensive injuries. Bruising all over his body, burns from a taser gun, a severe concussion, facial nerve damage, a fractured eye socket, a broken cheekbone, and a broken leg. The blows were so forceful that they even knocked out several fillings from his teeth.
King was taken to an emergency room where doctors were shocked by the severity of his injuries and predicted he would never fully recover.
This scenario, a Black man being pulled over and violently arrested, had eerie echoes of the lead-up to the Watts Rebellion nearly 30 years before. But aside from the severity of the violence in the case of Rodney King, there was another crucial difference. This time, the brutality was caught on tape.
Not yet knowing about the video, Rodney King's brother Paul went to the Foothill police station the next day to file a formal complaint about the beating. Unfortunately, but unsurprisingly, the sergeant intimidated Paul and sent him away without filling out any official paperwork.
The whole ordeal might have ended right then and there if not for George Holliday's damning tape, which he released to KTLA, a major Los Angeles TV station.
The Rodney King tape managed to go viral, even though it was still years before the internet was widely used. Within days, the footage was plastered across news broadcasts throughout the country.
Facing incontrovertible evidence of wrongdoing, all 4 officers involved in the beating were quickly indicted on charges of unlawful assault and use of excessive force by a police officer.
The Rodney King footage triggered a moment of reckoning for the United States. With a glaring example of extreme misconduct caught on tape, the nation was forced to confront a dark truth about the severity and consequences of police brutality.
Coming up, the verdict in the Rodney King trial sets off a violent uprising.
Shop with Rakuten and you'll get it. What's it? It's the best deal. Great cashback rates and more savings on your shopping. So join Rakuten and get cashback at over 500 brands like Marks & Spencer and End Clothing. You can even shop the sales and still get cashback. Just start your shopping with Rakuten to save money at over 500 brands. Join for free at rakuten.co.uk or get the Rakuten app. That's RAKUTEN.
Julie could part exchange her car. Or check out We Buy Any Car. She could be unsure if she got a good deal part exchanging. Or have cash in the bank with more bargaining power to get a bigger car for her 5-a-side team. Totally played. Oh, total player. To get a quote in 30 seconds, enter your reg number now at WeBuyAnyCar.com.
Here at Spotify Advertising, we know a thing or two about being a daily companion. Just like the morning coffee that helps you rise and shine, and the running shoes that power your afternoon workouts. 92% of our users say Spotify is an essential part of their daily routine. And since we're with them 2 hours every day, it means more moments for your brand to reach an engaged audience that is ready to hear and see your ads. Learn how Spotify can add more to your mix at ads.spotify.com.
Now, back to the story.
In March of 1991, the videotaped beating of 25-year-old Rodney King at the hands of 4 LAPD officers shocked the United States, triggering a long overdue conversation about issues of race and police brutality.
Within Los Angeles, Black residents were angered by what they saw, but not entirely shocked. They had come to expect such treatment at the hands of police. There was even a sense of hope that now that such a vivid example of police misconduct had been captured on tape, perhaps some justice might be served.
But just 2 weeks later, another horrific taped incident further fanned the flames of racial tension within South Central LA.
On March 16th of 1991, a Black teenager named Latasha Harlins walked into the Empire liquor store to buy groceries for her family. The Korean store owner, a woman named Soon Ja-doo, watched carefully as 15-year-old Harlins put a bottle of orange juice in her backpack and made her way to the counter with money in hand.
Doo physically confronted Harlins about what she saw as attempted theft, pulling at Harlins' sweater and backpack to recover the bottle of juice, which cost $1.79.
Latasha fought back, striking Doo in the face and knocking her down, which allowed her to break free from Doo's grip.
At this point, Harlins left the bottle of juice on the counter and turned to leave, but she only made it a few steps.
Doo pulled out a gun and shot Harlins in the back of her head from point-blank range, killing her.
When police arrived at the scene, they found $2 bills still clutched in Harlins' hand.
At first, the killing of Latasha Harlins was covered in select national papers, but didn't make front-page news. Within Los Angeles' Black and Korean communities, however, the incident triggered anger and discord.
As in the case of Rodney King, the entire incident was caught on tape, this time by a surveillance camera. Despite the footage clearly showing that Harlins was leaving the store when she was shot, Soon Ja Du claimed that she fired in self-defense because she believed her life was in danger.
In October of 1991, Du was convicted of voluntary manslaughter. The maximum sentence could be 16 years in prison, but Judge Joyce Carlin sentenced Du to just 5 years probation, 400 hours of community service, and a $500 fine.
In late April of 1992, a state appeals court unanimously upheld Judge Carlin's sentencing. Meanwhile, the trial for the officers who beat Rodney King was reaching its end.
The Black community followed the trial closely, hoping for vindication. After what they saw as a grave miscarriage of justice in the case of Soon Ja Du, they hoped that at least the 4 LAPD officers would face consequences for brutally beating Rodney King.
But from the outset of the trial, that outcome was by no means a foregone conclusion. In a surprising move, the defense attorneys for the police successfully argued that it would be impossible for their clients to receive a fair trial in Los Angeles due to the extreme publicity around the case.
As a result, the proceedings were moved from Los Angeles to the distant suburb of Simi Valley, a predominantly white area which also happened to be home to many active and retired police officers.
This meant that prospective jurors were likely to know police officers personally, as neighbors, friends, or even family members. While this might have biased the jury against Rodney King given the nature of the case, the selection process went ahead anyway.
The prosecution felt limited in their options, but they did the best they could. The jury, drawn from the surrounding community, was composed of 6 white men, 4 white women, 1 Hispanic woman, and 1 Filipino woman. It would be hard to argue that this was a jury of Rodney King's peers.
In another interesting point, Rodney King himself did not take the stand during the trial, as the prosecution didn't think it was necessary to make their case. After all, they had irrefutable video evidence of the events to play for the jury.
This total faith in the power of the videotape turned out to be misplaced. By this point, a year after the beating had originally occurred, the footage had been played on the news hundreds of times, diminishing its shock factor. And the defense also employed a crafty move to further lessen the impact of the tape.
Attorneys for the LAPD broke the video down into still images and provided justifications for the officers' behavior after each frame. Fragmenting the footage made it harder to judge the speed and ferocity of the blows, which in turn made the officers' conduct easier to defend.
The jury of predominantly white Simi Valley residents was likely receptive to the explanations from the defense. The members of the jury interpreted the video in the only way they could, through the lens of their own interactions with the police or their own backgrounds in the military or police force. And these were obviously very different experiences from Rodney King's.
In their experience, it is likely that the police didn't use force unless it was absolutely necessary. So hearing attorneys calmly explain why each blow was delivered likely relieved a sense of cognitive dissonance and gave the members of the jury a way to make sense of what they witnessed.
On April 29th of 1992, after a 6-week trial and 6 hours of deliberation,